Cyrus Gray!
Hey, gang, what do you have to say, baby? It's going to be a wild evening. You know what? Nothing like starting off and hitting the ground in a dead run. You know what? Guys and gals, my name is Cyrus Gray. It was more of need and necessity and want. I'm married. You see, I live on a farm. Yeah, I know. I play in the dirt. But after months of playing in the dirt, and the only conversation is between you and the other animals and critters that are running around, it was my wife. She's the one that told me, you need to find an outlet for what you're doing, or you're going to go crazy. It was the likes of a neighbor who invited me to come to a festival, Homegrown Fest. I thought, oh, this is going to be kind of neat. It was a fascinating event. And I don't know, 14, 15 different bands were playing through the day, and I'm thinking, okay, it's worth the $20 ticket to go in and have fun. Except there was no $20 ticket. I got a note on the internet, and it came and said, price of admission, a covered dish. I thought, okay, this is kind of different. So I prepared my covered dish, and we went to the event. I walked into the event, and I saw people that I had seen. I really don't know them. I mean, I've just recently moved here. And, of course, man running the event. And it's no secret, it was Dodd Edwards. And the music, it was not specific. There was pop. There was folk. We had country. I don't know what we had in one, but it was fascinating to watch. By the time that I got home, I told my wife, I said, I have an idea. We get syndicated music. They give you 10 bad songs. Pick the one that least likely hurts your ears, and that is your hit. And unsigned artists, they come with their A game every time. Why? Because it's their baby. Well, HUGS Fest lets you come out and show your baby off. I explained it to my wife. She said, well, go ahead. And off I went.
Who gave you a key to come in here? That's what I want to know.
You know what? We're still looking for the guy. I took everything that I had, and I formulated it, and I took it to a station. And the answer was no. No explanation, just no. And the next one, no. But they didn't point out a specific. And I thought, I wonder why. Until I got down to one of the last ones that I had shopped to, and they told me, you won't have a fan base. It'll be short-lived. It has no marketability. And there's no quality in what you're producing. And I was pretty taken by that. And I was about ready to say, okay, maybe I can't change things. But it was a friend of mine, Brian Phillips. And of all things, he runs a paranormal show. He actually has one of the only paranormal shows that is broadcast on the FM channel and open airways in the country. And he told me, he said, I might have an avenue. He said, I can get you in the door, and you do the rest. So I agreed. I met with him, and we went in, and that's the first endeavor I had with Greg Hoover from WRGG. And WRGG itself is an entire story, but the fact of the matter, it's an LP radio station in Greencastle, Pennsylvania. Population is never max more than 4,000 people, and I have a radio frequency broadcasting distance of less than 30 miles. It was Greg that kind of put his hand and chin together and sat there and just shook his head, and he said, wow, I always wanted to do that, but I don't know how to do that.
Well, always wanted to do, the idea in the beginning was a local show of local people singing. There's a lot of talented people out there that aren't on the radio, that aren't on television, that aren't anywhere. Maybe playing at your local VFW, maybe not, but a lot of people that have talent, and we wanted to bring that to the radio, give them a chance to come to the radio.
He's like a little kid. His eyes big. This is fabulous. Before I could say anything else, he had already reached into the desk. He pulled out a key and he handed it to me. He said, listen, I love it. turn the lights out when you're done. And that was my first meeting with Greg Hoover. It wasn't about time slots. It wasn't about marketability. It wasn't about quality. It was about exactly what it is. True independent unsigned artists. It was about local people. It was about what's real. And off I went. I mean, that's my first endeavor with HUGS, and it was a half-hour show every 2 weeks.
What possibly could this be, sir?
I have no idea, but what could possibly go wrong? I mean, come on.
I only had about 4 or 5 songs that had been given to me, which meant now I have to look for a half hour to fill. And as you can see, face for radio, a voice that Foghorn Leghorn would like. However, I had to go find artists. So I had to search several avenues. I hit the internet. My first one that I had gone out to was actually a gentleman by the name of Damian Starkey. And I knew that he had had success, very big success with Puddle of Mud. And I told him what I was looking at doing. I think he wished me the best. And I don't think that he believed that I was going to try to make a difference. However, he sent me a track that had never not been released. It was his new one out of his new production studio, and little tag said, "Let me know when you're going to air it." I thought it was neat. I found Tim Gaynor.
I released the first single from my second album, and we're talking October of 2019. And really, I wasn't expecting a whole lot from it. I had been on some websites, some music sharing websites, and thought to myself, well, maybe, that's about as good as it's going to get. If I get a couple of plays, I'll be happy. If I sell a couple of copies of the CD, I'm good. I'd released an original single called The Sunrise Also Fell, and I'd put on the B-side a cover of Bob Seger's Get Out of Denver. I get an email from this guy. "I think your cover of Get Out of Denver is great. Bob Seger would be so proud of you. Listen, I got this thing. I want to put you on there." Sure, okay, why not, Get a little bit of radio play. Sounds like a plan to me. That was my first exposure to Cyrus Gray.
So now I've got these artists that are from outside of our area, but they're still independent artists, and they're unsigned, and they've got fascinating music. So we put together our first half-hour show, and Brian Phillips came in and helped me out because I'm telling you, it was all new. How are we going to fill a half hour? Wow.
This is an emergency broadcast. The unpleasant noise you are about to hear coming from your radio is not a mistake. Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go so that you can make the sound we broadcast as loud as possible.
Loud as possible.
I started getting emails. I started getting phone calls. And a few of the local artists found out that this was happening. I expressed to them, listen, I have no intentions to do anything with your music except make it heard. I have no express interest in offering you anything. I don't need anything from you. And more artists became to come in. Before too long, I do believe it was less than 3 months, the show moved to every week. And then it became every week, 1 day a week, and for an hour, until we found out that I had an onslaught because somewhere along the line, somebody told somebody. it became like a fuse. Until the point where we had so many artists and so many songs that we couldn't do it in an hour. And it was Greg Hoover that came to me and he said, "Where are you finding these people?" I'm not. They're finding me.
I get this phone call at about 2 a.m. We ended up talking for about 3 hours that night. About music, about the music industry, about HUGS, where it's going, what he's doing, why he wants to do it. And one of the first things that I said to him was, you realize you're about to open Pandora's box. Do you have any idea how many artists are starving for this kind of venue? Screaming for it. I want to be heard on the radio. And you are giving them the chance to do that. Do you have any idea how this is going to grow? Nope, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, Sparky, you better strap in because things are about to get wild.
I'm used to going into a production place where the cameras are set up, the PAs are set up, everything. It's right there in front of me. All I do is push the button and talk. And they don't tell you that when you go into a radio station. There is this magnitude of buttons that are everywhere, blinking, flashing, icons that are coming up and warnings. You're oblivious to that. Until I was in the middle of the show and the phone is ringing off the hook and I'm thinking, why is it calling? I answered and it's because we're not broadcasting anything. Well, that's impossible. Everything says I am. Nothing. And then I can't remember it was who called me and asked me if I had a problem at the station. I said, well, getting calls were shut down. Oh my God, go look at the server. Where's the server at? It's under your desk and it's back in the corner. It's going to have a transmit light. So I crawled under the desk and I'm going, there's no lights down here. He said, oh my God, how did you turn the server off? I didn't touch anything. And of course, the meeting which transpired on Monday, tell us what happened. I don't know. And then the report came in. We had 13,000 people hit WRGG's server unbeknownst to anyone because no one ever paid attention to, nobody paid attention to the legs. I know I didn't. I didn't know it existed. And so they fine-tuned it and increased the number until the next week. It took 10 minutes before we shut the server down and everybody called me. Of course, the meeting on Monday, how and why is this happening? I don't know. We don't even have a Facebook. We don't have anything.
There's so many people, just in this area, but all over the country, out of the country. Like he showed me this one time, he showed me all the people involved in this thing. And he's like, there's one kid from Jerusalem, like Australia and Canada and, all Oregon and the UK and just all over the world, and I'm thinking, this little station in Greencastle, Pennsylvania is able to generate all this, and people are sending in just,
And that is where I'd say the start of HUGS really began, because it was at that point that it wasn't me alone. It wasn't just a little help. It became people helping people, and they were people who I had no idea. None. And that was unique and scary.
I'll tell you what, guys and gals, well, welcome one and all. We've got a boatload of tracks for you for this weekend.
They expanded my time slot. They gave me 2 hours, then 3, 4, 6, until the point where I was literally exhausted to the point of having to drive back from the station in the middle of the night to get done. And we had to expand it 2 nights a week. And of course, 2 nights went from 3 hours here and 3 hours here. And then people got involved.
I'd worked in radio, and I'm listening to this show. You know what this show needs? Needs a good introduction. I had this character in my radio days, a guy who was a parody of the great Don Pardo, the great NBC TV announcer who used to announce, live from New York, it's Saturday night. I have a creation of him called Don Lardo. And I went, well, wouldn't it be funny if we did this? We had this introduction to this show where we had the late night theme.
And now, live from the observatory of 93.7 WRGG Greencastle, it's the Homegrown Underground Sound Show, the Wednesday night HUGS Blast.
And I listened back to this, and I'm chuckling to myself, going, nobody's going to believe this. Sure as God made little green apples, this fool puts it on the air the next couple of days. And the thing just balloons out of nowhere. You know, this is the official start of the HUGS show. And I'm going, oh, man, what did I just do?
A lot of help. John Rakowski. They had a band. It was called Lee Toast. Great guys. IT brains. Pim Gaynor. Radio, TV, award-winning productionist. Matt Shaker out of Arizona writes some of the most iconic theatrical openings, and a composer.
So as I got more involved with HUGS and with Cyrus Gray and Tim Gaynor and the other people that are really the blood, sweat, and tears of HUGS Radio that make this all happen for us, I was asked, would I be willing to compose a theme song for the HUGS Radio program? This would be branded music that would be kind of the signature identifier of HUGS Radio. And so I did, and they used that music for the opener and the ins and the outs and commercial breaks and things like that.
All these people came to the forefront and began building the puzzle to work. It's like building the boat. All of a sudden, somehow I ended up being Noah, and other people started showing up, except they were building the boat.
A couple of weeks later, it's like, well, I need an ending. Okay, well, I'll fix you an ending. Okay, well, I need, announcements for this and that and this and that. And I'm adding to this, and I'm going here, and I need a commercial from you. What do you mean you need a commercial? The 25-watt station out of Pennsylvania. Who is going to buy airtime on this? Sure enough, here comes True North Pedals. Here comes Mars Guitars. Here comes Sayings from G. I'm like, I just became production director for this show. How did this happen?
John Rakowski encompassed, I don't know how many other people. And next thing you know, he said, we have a plan. What's the plan? We want to have a chart. I'm thinking, you want to have a chart? I'm lucky that we have a pencil and piece of paper. The fact of the matter is, I didn't devise it. This brain trust didn't come up with it. They did. HUGS did. HUGS artists that were involved into it came up with a chart system, a point system. It didn't encompass a popularity contest. It became more of what other people are listening to.
You moved up. Everything's great. You're in the top 10. The top 10 of what? What are you talking about? A top 10.
As it grew, we grew.
There's more taffy in this room than I can possibly shake a stick at.
You got it, baby.
These artists that are on this show, present company included, by the way, want one thing and one thing only. They want to be heard. They simply want the platform to have their art received. That opens up such a world of possibilities. The sky's the limit. And to be, for lack of a better term, on this train is quite something to watch. Even if you're on the inside, it's something to watch and to see how not just the artist but the audience responds to it, how the listener responds to it. It's something to behold.
We doubled and tripled in size within a year, and that was before the pandemic hit. We expanded into the TuneIn app. They opened up the lines to it. And matter of fact, that's when we first found out. I didn't know, and I still don't understand it fully, but we had people who were rebroadcasting the show in other countries. When I began getting songs in from France, Russia, China,
there was this bizarre metamorphosis that went on that I can't put my finger on, that I can't describe to you. But I can tell you this. It was totally organic. It caught everyone by surprise. And there was no stopping this train.
But then we ended up in, I think it's called British Columbia, Canada. I had to go to a map and look to find out. And right next to Alaska I had a band that was from there. Beast and Fish. Never heard of them. And it was about that time that a young kid by the name of Gavi sent in from Israel a track. And I thought, oh, here we go.
I think the success of the show caught us all off guard. I won't lie. Nobody. I mean, I told him in the beginning, yeah, you've opened Pandora's box, but nobody saw this coming. Literally.
Oh, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about doing something here in the booth. And we said, what are you going to do? I'm going to do a HUGS Live Drive. You went, HUGS Live Drive?
They wanted to do a little thing for raise some money and, you know, having a sock drive or an ad drive. And I wanted to do something different. So I went in and talked to Greg Hoover. I said, I'm going to do a fundraiser and I'm going to call it the HUGS Live Drive. He looked at me like like I had a thyroid in the middle of my head. And what would that be? I said, I'm going to bring artists into the station and we're going to go live 10 hours. You must have fallen and hit your head on a rock. And I said, no. He said, well, you can't go live because we have your commercial. I said, no, we're going to read. Everything will be live. And where are you going to get these artists? I don't know yet, but I'll get back to you. So I went out, came back home. I made a couple phone calls. I talked about it. I put it out in emails to people. I had 18 artists that responded from everywhere. Chicago. I had Minnesota, Maryland, the Carolinas, PA, Pasadena. I took the list into Greg. I said, here's what we got. And he went, wait a minute. They're coming in to here, Greencastle. Yeah. They're going to play live. Where are you going to put these people? I said, we're going to set up each room as its own sound place. By the way, we're going to need your office.
I had the privilege of playing the live drive, and I finally got to meet all these people that I might have spoken with in chat rooms, might have gotten an occasional email from, but I really didn't know from Adam. And I walk into the station, here's Megan Paullet. She walks up and just gives me this great big hug. Hi, Tim. God, it's great. I'm so glad I finally met you. Wait, what? Are you kidding me? You know, I'm sitting here and I'm you know, hanging out with Yiga Digga, one of the biggest bands on the East Coast. Here's this little schlump from Chicago hanging out with guys that opened for Pantera and Anthrax. What? Are you kidding me? And we're all talking like we're old friends.
When the pandemic hit, HUGS was an infant, and musicians really didn't have a place to go to get their music out. You couldn't play live gigs. What does HUGS do? HUGS decides to put together a live drive. They played 10 hours of live music and live advertising reads. Everything was live for 10 hours to raise money for the radio station.
People that I never walked up, when I finally got to meet them, it's like we've known each other for 1,000 years. Timmy Gaynor's like, yeah, I met him and Marcello in a local restaurant right before the live drive. It's like we've known each other forever. And it's just a strange thing to me because I don't know. I think they'll tell you the same thing.
Things are rocking. I meet people right away and the place is hopping. And there's people playing live on the air like nonstop, you know, in different rooms, and I mean, it's all over, you know. And I think Marcello flew in from California. He was setting everybody's guitars up. There were so many people coming in, and so he just lent a hand. And so it was immediately, he introduced himself. He says, "What can I do for you?" And it's like there was just a camaraderie, like right away. It's like, oh, well, thank you. You know, that's all. That's nice of you. You felt like you knew people right away.
I ended up in the back room while everybody was getting interviewed and playing. And I'm back making too much noise with people I just met, and we're singing back there together with music. We just put it all together right there. We were having a blast. And we were too loud for the studio up front, but you know, my apologies on that, but it still turned out okay. But the people you meet.
I get there, I get to the station, and I see Tim Gaynor and Marcello and Alan White and these people that I've never met in person, but I know who they are. I see them, I'm like, oh, you're Tim Gaynor. You're Marcelo Obregon. You're, and we, shake hands, we hug, we embrace, we laugh, we spend this time together in this place. And it's so funny because so many of us have never met each other, but you wouldn't know that if you were there in those rooms, in the booth, listening to the conversations that people were having and watching the interactions that people had with one another.
Through that time and through that show, Yigga Digga was able to meet people from California, Chicago, St. Louis, people we would have never in a million years been able to meet, to forge what I consider lifelong musical friendships with people across the country.
This was the formation of a family. This was the grassroots of an honest-to-God groundswell of a movement.
I watched people come through the door that I've never seen and met in my life. Meet, greet, and hug each other.
My husband was there with me, and we were leaving to go back to the hotel, and he said, I can't believe that you've never met any of those people. Are you sure you guys have never met before? And I said, no, not before tonight. This is the first time that I've met, first time I met Tim, first time I met Marcelo.
That's when I knew HUGS wasn't turning into something, that it had mutated into a family.
Ain't that cool?
We've parted ways. 365 free from the wrath of your word stays. Now I've got to tell you, since you've been gone, I've been living for me, exploring all the things in a life you said I couldn't be. Well, honey, look at me now. When you turn it down, you're gonna hear me on the radio. You're gonna wish that you had never let me go. You're gonna sing along with the song that I sing, and then think, hey, I know that girl. When you hear me on the radio, when you hear me on the radio. Something so small can go up so fast. We were young and we thought it was love, but now it's all in the past. Funny, I thought I had to be what you wanted to keep you around, but there are fish in the sea who adore me for me, as it turns out. And honey, look at me now.